Dr. Haley, we are up to Daf Kuf Kaf from the base on the bottom is Motzoi Shabbos, the Shabbos of Ishruchag, of Motzoi Sukkos, Baruch Hashem, Zeiche, to continue learning this wonderful Masechta of Bava Basra. And the Gemara all the way to the bottom, Kuf Kaf Aleph from the base, declares the following Shaila. Yibailahu. We've discussed the Machlokes as to how Eretz Yisrael was Neschalik within each family. And the question was, is it Neschalak to the Yosy of Mitzrayim, or was it Neschalak to the Boyei Haaretz? But we never discussed this Shaila in relation to each of the Shvatim. We were just discussing within each Shevet how the land was distributed. Now the Gemara is going to clear that same Shaila related to the Shvatim themselves. So Eretz Yisrael, the Shvatim, we know it was split up into 12 parts, one for each Shevet. So how was it split up? Was it split up to the Shvatim, which would be similar to the Yosy Mitzrayim? So it was split into 12 sections, 12 equal sections based on the 12 Shvatim. Or maybe we looked at how many members of each Shevet entered Eretz Yisrael, and based on that amount, the allotment for each Shevet was determined. Zok Gemara Tashma. The Gemara brings two rayas that in fact it was Lashvatim, which means each of the Shvatim got an equal Shevet. Tashma. The Pasuk says in reference to divvying up the Eretz Yisrael to Shvatim, Ben Rav Lamat, meaning some Shvatim there was more property per person, and some Shvatim there was less property per person. But this says quite clearly that it was Neschalak to the Shvat. V'oitanya, we have another brisa. This is a long brisa, from which we will also have another clear raya that Eretz Yisrael was Neschalak to the Shvat. Asida Eretz Yisrael shet Neschalak l'shloisha aser Shvat. Originally, in the days of Yeshua, the Eretz Yisrael split up into 12 halakim, and Yosef got 2 halakim for a famine from Menashe, and Levi didn't get anything at all. But when Mashiach comes, Eretz Yisrael is going to be split up into 13 halakim. Levi is going to get a chelak, but we're going to soon see in the Gemara as it develops that Yosef will only get 1 chelak. So we're going to have to know who that 13th chelak goes to, and we'll get to that later. Shabbatchila, originally when Klal Yisrael came into Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael was only split into 12 shvat. And it was not split up only with money. And the Havamini of the Gemara is right now is that if one chelak, if one shevet got a better quality property than the other, there would be a payment made, an equalization payment made from the shevet who got a better piece of property to the shevet that got a lower grade property. Shenemar ben Rav Lama. So here it's quite clear that each shevet got the same amount of property. Omer Rav Yehuda said, Sab Yehuda Shavachama Yisrael Begalil. Property in Yehuda is much more valuable than property in the Galil, and therefore it was worth, the property in Yehuda was worth 5 times the amount as a property in the Galil. Rishbam later on tells us the reason why property in Yehuda was worth more is A, it was closer to the base of Mikdash, it's in the action, but B is in the core of the country, you're much more protected from your enemies. If you're living near the border areas, as we see now, people in the Galil, people living north, had to be evacuated because they're too close to the enemy. And it was only Neschalik Begoyrel, meaning when Yeshua split up the land, there was a Goyrel made to determine which Shevet got which Chelak. Shenemar Ach Begoyrel. Not only was there a Goyrel, there was also an Urim V'tumim. A lot of redundancy in showing Yad Hashem so that people won't be able to complain. Shneimar, it says in the Pasuk, Al Pi HaGoyrel, HaKetzat, Elazar Melubish Urim V'tumim. Elazar Kohen put on the Urim V'tumim. Yeshua v'chol Yisrael oimdim l'fam. Yeshua and all of Klal Yisrael were standing in front of him. The Kalpi Shel Shvatim, they had a box with a whole bunch of cards, 1 card per Shevet. the Kalpi Shel Tchumen. They also split up Eretz Yisrael into 12 parts, and each part was on a cart. Munach and Lefanav were in front of Elazar. Vayim Mechaven Baruch HaKodesh V'Omer. Elazar was Mechaven Baruch HaKodesh, and he said, Zavulun Oila, the next card we pick out of the box of the Shvatim will be Zavulun. Tchum Aku Oila Imai. And the next card that we're going to pull out of the box with the different territories will be Aku. Tarp Bekalpi Shel Shvatim. And then he actually did it. V'Ola B'Yodei Zavulun. Tarp Bekalpi Shel Tchumen. V'Ola B'Yodei Tchum Aku. So exactly as was predicted by Elazar HaKohen with the Urim V'Tumim with Ruach HaKodesh, that's exactly what happened. And then he went in for the second one. And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly how it went, Shevet by Shevet, until all of Eretz Yisrael was divvied up. The chalukah that Yeshua did in Olam Hazeh is very different from how it's going to be split up, lost at Lavai when Mashiach. In Olam Hazeh, Adam yesh leisad alovim and leisad pardes. If your field happens to be a wheat field, made to plant grain in, you're not going to have orchards there. Sad pardes. If you have an orchard, ein leisad alovim, you're not going to have a grain field. But la'olam haba, lost Lavai, when everybody gets their piece of property, every different type of terrain and suitable for different types of planting, every single person got an equal amount of those different terrains in their allotted property. Shenemar, because it says in the pasuk, Shar Ruben echad, Shar Yehuda echad, Shar Levi echad. Everything was exactly the same. And Hakadosh Baruch Hu machalek lehen ba'atzmai. It wasn't done through. It's not going to be done through shluchim like Elazar and Yeshua. Hakadosh Baruch Hu b'chpoidu ba'atzmai is going to be divvying up Eretz Yisrael. Shenemar ve'ela machleklusam ne'um Hashem. So that is the brisa. We're going to analyze the brisa in more detail a little bit later, but now we're trying to extract the information that we're looking for and prove that Eretz Yisrael was separated evenly amongst Shvatim. Katani miyas. We see clearly that there was 12 equal pieces given to the 12 Shvatim. Beautiful. Now we're going to analyze the brisa in more detail. Omamar. Now see the Eretz Yisrael. So Frek Gemara, if there's only 12 Shvatim, so Idach Leman, who will the 13th Shevet go to? The 13th piece of property go to. It's going to go to the Nasi. The person who services the city, meaning he services the people. The Nasi, his job is to be an Eved to the people. Yahavduhu, he will be served because Shifta Yisrael by all the Shvatim, meaning he will get a piece of property. It doesn't say property, it just says Yavdu, they will serve him. Who said it means they will serve him by giving him property? Maybe they'll give him their servants to provide labor for him. Maybe they'll provide him with a staff. Who said it means they're going to give him property? This pasuk is referring to Eretz Yisrael and how it was split up. And what happened is Eretz Yisrael was split into 13 strips. Each strip went from east to west across Eretz Yisrael. They were all exactly the same height, and there were 13 strips lined up. Now, the top 5 strips belong to 5 Shvatim. The bottom 7 strips belong to 7 Shvatim. And the strip in the middle was the strip where the Beis HaMikdash was built, where Yerushalayim was, which was international. Now, that strip is very long and not so wide. So what they did was they cut out a square in the center of Eretz Yisrael in that strip, and that center was where Eretz Yisrael was and Yerushalayim was, where Beis HaMikdash was and where Yerushalayim was. But Mizeh, the left and the right, the east and the west of that square, that went to the Nasi. So the 13th chelik was split between the Nasi and Yerushalayim, the Beis Hamikdash. The price also says that there were some equalization payments made. Should never been rabbin. Why was one worth more than the other that required an equalization payment? If it means that some properties were of poor grade, weren't good to plant on, were rocky, no one would have been happy with such an arrangement. They would have been screaming and complaining because don't give me money. I need a property that I can use for the long term. What's money going to do for me? Nobody would accept that. So if there was a offset payment, it had to have been to offset for some other advantage. It must be that the whole purpose of this payment was people who live closer in Yehuda, like we learned, their property was more valuable than those that live further away. We also have a machlekes tanoim. Lezer said that the equalization payment was made with kak, as our Brisa says. But Rabbi Yeshua says that it was actually karka, meaning the person who had the land that was more valuable because it was closer, he got a little bit less, and the shevet that was further away got a little bit more, and that's how the equalization was made. So let's look at the Rishbam. The karkois were split evenly. If you had a weaker property that didn't plant so well, you would get a bigger piece of property. So there you were compensated with property. You got more property if the property wasn't such a fertile piece. But if it was merely a question of you had an equal grade of property, but your property was further from Yerushalayim than others, that was equalized with money. And the response is far away from Yerushalayim is bad for two reasons. It's further from the Beis Hamikdash. It's too close to the border. And he has to be worried about cross-border missiles and projectiles. Based on this pshat, that the equalization is only, the payments are only for Rachik and Karev. But if you had a weaker property, you got a bigger piece of property. So when Rabbi Yehuda said that a property is worth more in Yerushalayim than it is in the Galil, or in Yehuda than it is in the Galil, it's Rabbi Yehuda Milsa Ba'apinavshikamer. He was speaking about something else. He was just mentioning a separate halacha, the Mishanopel Garei Lebeglil, Noitel Heisoin, Kneketzo Shechaveyoi, Noitel Beyehuda. But he wasn't directly commenting on the equalization payment, because the equalization payment had to do with closer and further. And Rabbi Yehuda was talking about higher quality and more poor quality. Inami, or Mishum Dekamar Tanakama the Kurva Baruchba Nachalkim B'Ksofim. Or maybe he is referring to what the Tanakama said, that there's equalization payments based on how close or far you were. So also he was giving you the evaluations how much those equalization payments would be. So basically, there's probably two pshat in Rav Yehuda. Either he was explaining the equalization payments, or the equalization payments were Karav Arachik, and Rav Yehuda was talking about better property or worse property, which would be offset by giving more property. Gewaltig. Sagt der Heilige Gemara weiter. The Brisa says that the Eretz Yisrael was separated through a Gorel. Shenemer ach begorel. Tana we learned ach begorel. Ach is a miyut, meaning there were some people that did not receive their property in Eretz Yisrael with a Gorel. Who were those? Yotu Yeshua Bekol. They didn't get their property for a Gorel. Zoktamur Lamai. What does it mean they didn't get their property for a Gorel? If it means they didn't get a piece of Eretz Yisrael at all, we know that's not true. Hasha the lav did who shakel. We already learned that they got the chelik of the Meradlim, so they even got somebody else's chelik. Did Humi boy? Surely they received their own chelik. Ella, what are we being mimid them from? Ella shenatlu begorel. They didn't get the chelik for a gorel. Ella al pi Hashem. Hashem directly stated what piece of property Kalev was going to get and Yeshua was going to. Yeshua dechsiv Pi Hashem nosnu lo es ha'ir asher shol. Pi Hashem, he was given the property that he wanted. What was the name of the property? As Timnas Serach, and this wasn't higher. However, here the pasuk calls that property Timnas Serach, but in another place, the Novi refers to the property with a different name. Ksiv Serach or Ksiv Cheres. There's another pasuk that says Yeshua was buried in his property. So why was the property have two names, Serach and Cheres? Amar Belozer, Dr. Belozer, before Yeshua got this piece of property, it didn't produce good pears. They were not juicy. They were dried out like the Cheres. But once Yeshua got the property itself was in the Sporach. They would be so juicy, the pears, that after a little while they would go bad. We know the juicier the pears, the quicker they spoil. Or there's another shot. Originally they were very, very juicy, and because of that, they would spoil quickly. And then they became a little bit less juicy, but very gishmak, but at least they weren't spoiling very quickly. So the main point is that after Yeshua got his property, it improved dramatically. What about Kalev? How do we see that he got his property directly from Hashem, not from Goyal? He got Chevron, like Moshe said, and then they chased away, they drove out the Goyshit. In fact, the Gemara, Kalev could not have received Chevron as his chelik, because Chevron ir miklat avoy. Chevron was ir miklat. Amar Abaye parva. It means the province around Chevron. That's what Kalev received. Beautiful. Now let's start a new mission. This mission is a little bit of a chazara of what we already learned, but it sort of sums it all up and brings it all together. A son and a daughter have the same type of Yerusha. Now that in and of itself is going to be a question, because we know a son comes before a daughter. Ella, the only difference between the nachal of the ven and the nachal of the bas is shaben noitel pishnaim b'nichsayav. When does the son get pishnaim as a bechor? Only if it's yarshening the assets of his father. But the einay noitel pishnaim b'nichsayav. Again, this is very difficult to understand, because first the Mishnah is talking about comparing how a son yarshens to how a daughter yarshens, and then says Ella, the only difference between the son and the daughter is something that has nothing to do with son and daughter. It's that the son yarshens pishnayim from his father and not from his mother. That has nothing to do with the distinction between how a son yarshens vis-a-vis how a daughter yarshens. So this is a kasha that the Gemara is going to struggle with and come up with a pshat that will explain, in fact, how this last line we just read is, in fact, a distinction between the way a son yarshens versus the way a daughter yarshens. If there's not enough money after supporting the girls, because there's a Tanakh Ksuba that every man writes in the Ksuba that obligates his estate to support his daughters. And if there's not so much money, and after the daughters are supported, there'll be no Yerusha left for the boys, it's too bad for the boys. So the girls are first, because of the Tanakh Ksuba, to receive sustenance from the estate of the father. But if the mother died, her assets go directly to the sons, and the girls don't get any type of sustenance out of it, because there is no Tanakh Ksuba mandating the mother to provide that. That's a Tanakh Ksuba mandating the father to do that. Practical. What does the Mishnah mean? If what the Mishnah is trying to tell us, that boys and girls are the same in Yerusha, and no one takes precedent over the other, we know that that's not true. Not only does a son yarshin before a daughter does, but kol yoytze yerechel ben kodim lebas. Any descendant of the son is before the bas. Even a daughter of the son is before the daughter. This is what the Mishnah means to say. Echad aben v'echad avas noitlin beroyu kavamukse. A son and a daughter both not only take when they yarshin their father. A son yarshins them first, but if there's no boys, there's girls. They both yarshin the same way. Meaning, what if when the father died, the grandfather was still alive? So the son or the daughter will yarshin the father, and then when the grandfather dies, they'll yarshin their father's part of the grandfather's estate. So that means they both take Beroik of a Muksuk, even though their father didn't have his father's Yerusha in his possession yet, because his father was still alive. Later on, if the grandfather passes away later, each of these children yarshin their father's portion of the grandfather's estate. For the Gemara, we don't need our Mishnah to teach us this halacha, because Hanamitinina, we already learned this earlier in the parak. The Mishnah taught us that b'nois talachod not lushloisha chalakim in nachla. They took 3 chalakim in the nachla. They got chelak avin shoyim yoytzim mitzrayim. They got the father talachad's own chelak of Eretz Yisrael, but they also got the chelkoi im echav b'nichsei chefer. They got their father's share of chefer. So even if Tzlafchad would have died first, they received Tzlafchad's portion of Tzlafchad's father's estate. So we don't need our Mishnah to tell us that. And the earlier Mishnah in this parak already told us that. And if you're going to learn shot like that, my Ella, the Ella doesn't fit in, because the Ella Viter doesn't make any sense when we're talking about differences between a son's Yerusha and a daughter. Ella, Amar Papa Hachikon. Papa says there must be a different shot in the Mishnah. Echad Aben Vechad Abbas, Noitlin Chelek Bibechayr. Say a son and say a daughter get a Chelek of Bechayr. What does that mean? If a son yarshins a father, or if there's no boys and a daughter yarshins a father, and the father happens to be a Bechar, then when the grandfather dies, the father would have been entitled to 2 parts of the grandfather's Yerusha. Those 2 parts will go to the Yerush of the father, whether it's his son or whether it's his daughter. They will yarshin the Chelek HaBechayra that was coming to their father. That is also a Mishnah that we learned, because in the same Mishnah of B'nai Tzlafchad, the Mishnah told us the Shahaya Bechar, since Tzlafchad was a Bechar, Noitel Shnei Chalakim, the B'nai Tzlafchad took both of Tzlafchad's shares in Chefer's estate. V'yoid my Ella. This Mahalach doesn't explain the Ella in the Mishnah either. Well, Amar Rashi, Hachikam. This is what the Mishnah is. Echad bein habanim, v'echad bas bein habanos. Whether there's 5 sons or 5 daughters only and no sons, which means all of these sons are lined up to get Yerusha, or all of these daughters are lined up to get Yerusha. Im Omar Yirish Kol Nichsi, if the father decided that out of his Yerushim, he wants to give it all to one of them, Devar of Kayom, and it works. In other words, the father can say, I have 5 sons, and they're all supposed to Yarshin equal, but I don't want that. I want it all to go to Yankel. It works. Come on, where do you know such a halacha from? Rabbi Yochanan ben Breker. Rabbi Yochanan ben Breker taught us this halacha. And he learned it from the pasuk, in the day that the father is manchil esbonav, he has the right to be manchil whoever he wants. Except if there's a bechar, he has to give them pishnayim. But if besides that, he's allowed to give the rest of the Yerusha to anybody he wants. But why in the world do I need our Mishnah to tell us that? Come on, and Daf Kuf Lamed, the Mishnah talks about Rabbi Yochanan ben Breker, and it says Rabbi Yochanan ben Breker Aimer Im Amar Al Misha Royul Yershai. If he said about one of his children that we're going to yarshin him anyway, that I want him to have all of it, the Varav Kayaman, that works. However, Al Misha Eina Royul Yershai, Eina Orkim. You cannot divert and say, I don't want my Yerush to go to any of my children, I want it to go to Moshe Pippin. That you can't say. So why would we need our Mishnah to tell us this halacha as a Stam Mishnah if Rabbi Yochanan ben Breker already shared this with us later on Daf Kuf Lamed? If you want to tell me that the reason why our Mishnah wanted to give over Rabbi Yochanan ben Breker's halacha here as a Stam Mishnah is to show that Rabbeinu HaKadosh passes like Rabbi Yochanan ben Breker, because he quotes him anonymously, meaning as if to say that's what everybody holds. That wouldn't be the case anyway. Because here there's a Stam Mishnah Later on Daf Kuf Lamed, the Gemara, the Mishnah quotes a machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and Breka the Chachamim, whether or not this halacha is true. And we know that halacha is stam v'achav machlokes. If first something is mentioned as a stam Mishnah, and then later on it's mentioned in the machlokes, ain't halacha is stam. The halacha would not be like the stam Mishnah. Once again, you have the same problem. How does Ella fit into our Mishnah based on this? Ella Amar Marbar Avashi Hachi Kamar. This is the final pshat in our Mishnah. Echad Aben ve'echad Abbas Shavin v'nichsei Ha'ab u'v'nichsei Eim u'v'nichsei Ha'ab. The way a son yarshins both a mother and a father is exactly the same, and the way a daughter yarshins a father and a mother are exactly the same, except for one difference. When a son yarshins a father, it's different from the way he yarshins his mother. But a daughter, there is no difference between the way she yarshins her father and the way she yarshins her mother. So now Ella makes perfect sense, because we're making a distinction between when the son is Yerush and when the daughter is Yerush. When the son's Yerush, there's a distinction between who he's yarshining from, a mother or a father. But when the daughter is yarshining, there's no distinction between who she's yarshining from. Now, by a son, what is that distinction? Distinction number one is a son, a bechor, gets pishnayim when he's yarshining from his father but not from his mother. The einoi b'nichseim. The einoi noito pishnayim b'nichseim, but he does not get pishnayim b'nichseim. And the second nafkamina, as the Mishnah lists off, is that bas nezonis. When a son yarshins from a father, he has to give mezonis to the daughters. But when he yarshins from the mother, he doesn't have to give mezonis to the daughters. But when the daughter yarshin, there is no such distinction. Tanu Rabbanan, losais loy pishnayim. You give the bechor pishnayim. The Gemara wants to know what exactly is the double chelik that a bechor gets. Do you say pishnayim kechad? He gets whatever every other brother gets. He gets two. So, for instance, if there's four brothers, they split up the estate into 5 parts. The bechor gets 2 parts, and the other 3 brothers each get 1 part. Ata oimer pishnayim kechad. Is that what you do? Maybe what you do is you take all of the estate, you split it into 3 parts, and the bechor gets 2 of those 3 parts. The remaining third will then be split evenly amongst the rest of the brothers, which gives the bechor way more and the other brothers way less. Vidinu, there's an argument to be made in either direction. When he's splitting with 1 brother versus splitting with 5 brothers. When he's splitting with 1 brother, what are they going to do? They're going to split the estate into 3 parts. He's going to get 2 parts, and his brother will get 1 part. So what did he get? He got pishnayim kechad. He got double what his brother got. So therefore, say the same thing by multiple brothers. All he will get is twice what each of the other brothers get. That's one way to look at it. Or maybe I'll look at it from a different perspective. If he only has 1 brother, let's compare it to the cholkum hay. When you split it with 1 brother, he gets 2/3 of the entire estate. Because if he's getting double what his brother's getting, obviously he's getting 2/3 of the entire estate. So maybe afcholkum hay, he should get pishnayim b'chol nechosim. He should get 2/3 of the entire estate, and the other brothers split the remaining one. Talmud Loimar, we have a pasuk to tell us what Allah is. The Torah is saying we want to give as much as possible to the boys. So therefore, we don't want to give so much to the bechor. Torah wants the achan to get a lot. So therefore, don't look that the bechor gets 2/3 of the whole estate, and the koloshon rishon he only gets a double portion. This is the first raya that the Brisa brings to say that he gets a regular double portion. Now we just learned Rabbi Yochanan and Breka that tells us that a father has a right to divert all of his nechasim to one of a person who's Yerushalayim anyway. And where did Rabbi Yochanan and Breka learn it from? B'yom achilas bana. The Gemara is going to tell us soon that according to Rabbi Yochanan and Breka, you don't have this pasuk of a haya b'yom achilas bana. So therefore, we would need to find another makar for the halacha that the bechor just gets twice the amount of everybody else. And that's why the Gemara brings a second pasuk. The Gemara brings another back. It says in Divrei Hayamim, Uvenei Reuven Bechar Yisrael, Ki Hu HaBechar. Reuven was really the Bechar. And when Reuven did his Avera, Nitna Bechayras Levnei Yosef and Yisrael. His Bechar was given to the children of Yosef. Yosef was not called a Bechar. He just got the advantage of yarshening 2 parts. So we know that Yosef yarshened an equal part, or 2 parts, compared to the rest of them. But he didn't get 2/3 of the whole Eretz Yisrael. So that's another proof. That's another proof that the Bechor only gets a double chid. But the Brisa wasn't satisfied with that raya, and the Gemara is going to explain soon why. The Brisa brings another plus. It says, Ki Yehuda Gavar Ba'achav. Yehuda was greater than his brother, Ulanoged Mimenu, and he became above them. Ba'Bechayra LeYosef. And the Bechayra was given to Yosef. So here you have a pasuk that says Bechayra LeYosef. Nemar Bechayra LeYosef. We have a pasuk that says Bechayra LeYosef. And Nemar Bechayra LeDayros. And we have the pasuk that talks about a regular Bechor, and it says, La Yuchal Avaker Es Ben Ahuva Mipnei Ben Asnua Bechor. Ki HaBechor Es HaBechor Ben Asnua Yakir Losses like Pishnayim Bechol Shimotzaloi. Ki Hu Reishes Oinoi Hu or Loi Mishpat HaBechayra. So the halacha of a Bechor getting Pishnayim, the word Bechayra is used. It says the word Bechayra by Yosef, and it says the word Bechayra L'Dayros. Ma Bechayra Amur Yosef is Pishnayim Ke'echad. It was just a double chelik, not 2/3 of the estate. Bechayra Amur L'Dayros will be Pishnayim Ke'echad. Yet the Brisa is still not satisfied. Vaymer the Brisa brings another pasuk. Ani nesati lochem Shchem Echad Alachem. I gave you Yosef. Yaakov told Joseph, I gave you one extra city. I gave you Shchem. That I captured from the Amori with my sword and with my bow. Frek the Gemara or frek the Brisa. Did Yaakov fight with a sword and a bow? Well, like for never, the pasuk says, I'm never confident in my bow. My sword will not help me. When Yaakov said, I got Shechem with my cherev, he meant with tefillah and kashti zubakah. Why did the Brisa need to bring the second pasuk of Uvenei Reuven if we already have the pasuk of Hoya B'Yom Antchila Yisparna? So tomorrow, if you're going to say that the Hoya B'Yom Antchila Yisparna is to tell us the Chiddush of Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, like we discussed earlier, Hashma, that's where the Brisa brings another pasuk of Uvenei Reuven B'Chor Yisrael. In the pasuk of Uvenei Reuven B'Chor Yisrael, it says not on the Chayrasar of Yosef. And you want to learn that just like the B'Chayrasar of Yosef was just a double portion, so too the B'Chayra in the Parsha of B'Chayra means a double portion, but in the Parsha of B'Chayra it says B'Chayra, and in this pasuk it says B'Chayra Soy. Maybe you can't learn one from the other. Shema, B'Chayra Yosef, were the same word. Correct, Gemara, we still have a problem. There's V'chitema Yosef Kufei. How do we know Yosef got? We don't know exactly what Yosef's extra chelik was. How do we know it means one extra equal chelik? We don't know that. I gave you Shechem over your brothers. So you see, it wasn't 2/3 of all the state, it was just a little bit extra. Who said I gave you all the Shechem? Maybe I just gave you a little piece of property. How do you know it's an equal chelik? For that we have the pasuk of Ephraim and Menashe, Reuben and Shimon. The Yaakov specifically said that the chelik of Ephraim and Menashe, each of their chalakim will be similar to the same size as Reuben's and Shimon's. So that's clear that they just got a double portion. Yosef got a double portion equal to the portion that the other brothers received. Zok Gemara weiter. Boy min Rab Cholboy, min Rab Shmuel bar Nachman. Ma ro Yaakov shenotel b'chayim Reuben v'nosnol Yosef. Why did Yaakov see a reason, a need, to take away the Bechorah from Reuben and give it to Yosef? Frankly, Mara, what do you mean? The pasuk tells us Mara. Because Reuben did the Avera. Ella, what the Shiloh, what we're asking is, or Papa was asking Abaye, is Mara Shanit no Yosef. Why did he give it to Yosef? He took it away from Reuben, that I understand. But why did he give it to Yosef? Let me give you a mashal what this is compared to. A balabais who was wealthy was able to raise a Yosim who was helpless in his house. The Rashbam says, you know who the Yosim is? That's Yaakov Avinu, because he came down to Mitzrayim and he was fully hosted and fully supported by his son Yosef. So Yosef was the balabais. Shegadol Yosim zech beisai. L'yomim hesher so Yosef. When day Yaakov became wealthy, you know what? Because now he has Alas Yerusha to distribute, and he even got the chelik of Reuben back. Amar, he said, you know what I'm going to do with my extra money? I'm going to give it to Yosef because he did so much for me and he took care of me in my old age. Correct, Gemara, that cannot be. That cannot be Zucker Papa. Because he loved the Chata Reuben. Are you telling me that if Reuben wouldn't have done the Savera and his chelik of the Yerusha would not have been available, you're telling me Yaakov would have done nothing for Yosef? It's only because he got Reuben's chelik? It's almost like I'm not going to give you anything, Yosef, to show my Akar Shatoiv. I'll let Reuben pay you. That doesn't sound right. Ella, Rabbi Yonis and Rabbi Chaloika Chamar. Rabbi Yonis and your Rabbi did not say this. Rather, Avada, whatever Hakar Shatoiv Yaakov had to Yosef, he paid him. He paid him with cash. He paid him with other things, and that's not discussed in the Torah. This chelik of Bechorah has nothing to do. The fact that Yaakov diverted the chelik of Bechorah from Reuben to Yosef has nothing to do with the fact that Reuben didn't have there. So what is it? So Rabbi Yonis and Rabbi said, really, the Bechorah was supposed to be from Rachel, because that's really who Yaakov wanted to marry first. Yaakov Yosef. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu made it that Rachel shouldn't have children, and that Leah should, because of Rachamim that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had on her. And we took Tznius, Rachel, since Rachel showed tremendous Tznius, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave it back to her by giving the Bechorah back to the Bnei Yosef. So the Gemara wants to understand what exactly happened. What does it mean Leah got it barachim? It says in the pasuk the Einei Leah Rakos. Leah's eyes were running from water, from tears, because she cried a lot. My Rakos. What does it mean Rakos? Elena Rakos mamish that she had not pretty eyes. Chas v'sholom that the Torah would insult somebody by calling them not pretty. After begunus behemoth tmeir lo dibra kos. In Parshas Noach, the Torah says that the behemoths are tahirais and the behemoths asharinenu tahirais will go into the sukkah. Why didn't the pasuk will go into the teva? Why didn't Hashem just say behemoths tameis go into the teva? Teretz is because the gnus behemoth tameya lo dibra kos. The Torah won't even mention behemoth tameya, and the Torah would rather use extra letters and extra words, so it should sound nicer. So the Torah is so careful not to speak ill about an animal. You can do tzaddikim, dibra choshev. Surely you won't say that the Torah would say Leah's eyes were not pretty. Well, Amar Belazar would have mean to shematani say aruchos. Rakos means that she had long matanis, meaning she was going to have the schos that Batei Levia and Batei Kahuna and Batei Malchus would come out of her because she was the mother of Levi, she was the mother of Yehuda. Rav Amar, La'olam Rakos mamish. It means that she had runny eyes, teary eyes. That sounds like it's insulting. It's not insulting at all. Her runny eyes actually was part of how special she was. You know why? So she used to hear buddy forks in the road where yentas would hang out. Bnei Adam were talking. So Rivka's two sons, Yaakov and Esau. Her brother, Rivka's brother, Lavan has two sons. So it's a perfect shidduch. Which means Leah's the older one. She's going to marry the older brother. She had no idea what Lavan's older, what Yaakov's older son, what Rivka's older son was like. So she herself went to the Parshat Derachim, which is where she got her information. And she asked people, Gadol ma masav, what type of fellow is this older son of Yitzchak? So they told Leah, Ishrahu, he's a bad man. Malastim briais, he robs people. Katan mamasav. She says, what about the younger brother? What's he like? Ish Tom Yosef. So you can imagine Leah was devastated that she was destined to marry Esau and not Yaakov. She cried so much, her eyelashes fell out. And that's why she didn't look so nice. But it was all because of her tremendous chukah to be married to a tzaddik and not a Rasha. Ayar Hashem ki snua Leah. What do you mean she was hated? That's also derogatory. My snua, Ilema snua mamish, she was hated after begnus behema tamei la dibra akosov. But the gnus tzadikim dibra akosov, with the Torah talk about the gnus of tzadikim, Elora Kadosh Baruch Hu shesnuin ma'aseh Esav b'fanel. When the Kadosh Baruch Hu saw that she doesn't like the ma'aseh of Esav, and she doesn't want to be married to Esav, and because of that she wanted so much to be married to Yaakov, because of that tzidkis, Yiftach Esrachma, he opened up and gave her children. So what is the tznius that Rachel showed that got her back to Bechorah, that returned the Bechorah to her children? Umat tznius, Hoysa Bava Rachel. Chsiv, Vayagid Yaakov l'Rachel. Yaakov told Rachel when he met her by the well, Ki achi avu, that he is the brother of Rachel's father. V'chi ben Rivka, and he's also the son of Rivka. So that wouldn't make sense. If he is Rivka's son, he cannot be the brother of Lavan. He can't be the brother of Rachel's father. So why would he say, I'm your father's brother, when in fact he's really your father's nephew? Amar law, he told her, minciviously, I want you to marry me. Amar law, she told him, I'd be happy to marry you, but you need to know my father is a troublemaker. He's a crook. Well, that you're not going to be able to deal with him. He's going to run circles around. Amar law. So Yaakov asked her, in what way will he be a crook? What might he do to me? My Rama'usay. Amar lay. She told him, Isli achsa de kashisha min. I have an older sister. Well, there's no way that my father is going to marry me off before my older sister. Amar lay. So Yaakov said, I can outsmart him. So when he said, I'm your father's brother, it means I'm his brother in Hermois, I can handle him. Amar lay. So she told him, what do you mean, you're going to be a swindler as well? Who wants to marry a swindler? She asked Yaakov, you're going to lower yourself to my father's level? Yaakov answered, I absolutely will. Because with a decent person, you be decent. With a crook, titapel, you can outsmart him. So what did he do to protect himself from being swindled by Lavan? Moser lo simon. He gave Rachel a secret code that she would have to give him by the wedding to make sure that he was marrying the right woman. But Lavan was sending Leah to the chuppah instead of Rachel. When Leah was being brought to the chuppah, Savra, Rachel felt terrible for her sister because she's going to be humiliated in public when Yaakov asks her for the simonim, and she will not have them. My daughter, my sister will be humiliated. So you know what she did? She told Leah the simonim. Yaakov is going to ask me for a simon. This is the simon you have to give him. And that's why the pasuk said, in the morning, suddenly it turned out that it was Leah. Michlal, that hashta lav Leah. Well, until now it wasn't Leah, it was Leah all night. Ella, what it means is, Mitoich simonim shemos lo Yaakov lo Rachel. U'masrasa lo Leah, the simonim that Yaakov gave Rachel, that she disclosed to Leah, lo havi yadala. Yaakov didn't know that this was Leah until the morning when it was light and he was able to see her face. Boy mine Abba Khalifa Korea, Reb Chia Bar Abba. Abba Khalifa Korea asked the shaila of Reb Chia Bar Abba. Bichlalam, when you look at the pasuk that describes the Yidden coming down to Mitzrayim, led by Yaakov, the Torah tells us there were 70 nefashos that came at the Mount Shivin. But the Torah lists off all of the names of the people that came, and if you count them, you'll see that there are only 69 names. The Proton at the Mount Shivin Chasara. Amarle, so Reb Chia answered back. Reb Chia Bar Abba answered back. To Haisam Dina, there was probably a twin with Dina. When the list of Dina, it means there are two people there. If the S Dina Bito, S would indicate that there was someone else there. Fragt the Gemara. So Abba Khalifa asked Reb Chia Bar Abba, how could that be? If you're saying S means that there's a twin, that means Binyamin also had a twin. As it says in the pasuk, the S Binyamin Achiv Benimai. That the S would also mean that there was another person there. That's not the case. Zok to Gemara, Reb Chia told Reb Chia told who the person who asked the question of him. Reb Chia was asked by Abba Khalifa. Reb Chia told Abba Khalifa, "Oh, I was just testing you. You're a smart guy. I was trying to push you off with an incorrect answer because I wanted to see how sharp you were, and I see indeed you're very sharp, and therefore I'm going to have to tell you the real shot. Margolas Tova Hoysa Biyadi. I had a very special shot that I was keeping secret. You want to reveal the secret. You want to take away the Margolas from me by sharing it with the world." He was excited about it because he was just trying to test. Reb Chia was only trying to test Reb Abba Khalifa. So what was the real answer? This is what he said. Reb Chanina told me, you know the 70th person that's not listed by name? It's Yochevet. Why wasn't she listed by name? Because she wasn't there on the way down to Mitzrayim. So you Rasa B'derech. She was conceived on the way, and she was only born once they entered into Mitzrayim, in between the walls. She was only born to Levi in Mitzrayim. Reb Chelboy asked the question of Reb Shmuel Bar Nachmani. It says in the Pasuk, when Rachel gave birth to Yosef, at that point, Yaakov decided that it's time to go home. Send me. I want to go home. What about the birth of Yosef prompted Yaakov being ready to leave? My shnaki is Yalad Yosef. Omerle. So Rav Shmuel Bar Nachmani answered Rav Chalboy. Ra Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu saw Shein Zare Shal Esav Nimsar Ela B'Yad Zare Shal Yosef. He was afraid of going back home because Esav could kill him. So he needed to have the kryptonite, the silver bullet, to protect himself from Esav to be able to defeat Esav. And Yaakov knew that it was Yosef who would be that kryptonite. Shenemar V'Hoya Beis Yaakov Eish Ubeis Yosef L'Hov. Yaakov was compared to fire, and Yosef was compared to a flame. Ubeis Esav L'Kash. And Esav was compared to straw. Of course, a fire, when it has a flame, will consume and destroy the kash. I want you to over from somebody, I don't remember from who, that Esav is compared to kash because straw is a finished product. It doesn't need to be perfected anymore. It's not like grain that you'll grind and make into bread. Kash, straw, is the final product. Esav has that feeling of gaiva. I'm perfect. I don't need anything. I don't need to improve myself. I'm done. On the other hand, Eish is something that's never satisfied because it always wants to consume more and more. And the lahava, the flame, is the method through which the fire consumes more and more. So that midah of always wanting to steig more and more and grow more and more, that is the antidote to overpower the Esav's attitude of, I'm perfect, I don't need to improve. If you're telling me that you need Yosef to defeat Esav, I'm going to show you from the Navi where David HaMelech was able to defeat Amalek, who is Esav, without any help from Yosef. Because it says, Vayakim David, from one evening to the next evening, and he wiped out this Amalek battalion. Omar Lei, so Rav Shmuel Bar Nachmani told Rav Chalboy, I think you're making a mistake because you don't know Pshat in this Navi. Omar the Akrich Navi, whoever taught you Navi, didn't teach you Ksuvim, because in Ksuvim there was clarification to what actually occurred here with David. The Chsivit says in the Ksuvim, the Lechtoi al Tzakle, when David was running away from Shaul, and he went to hide out in the kingdom of Tziklag, Naflu Olav mi Menashe, a contingency from Menashe came to join him. Adena v'Yuzeved v'Yedil v'Michoel v'Yuzbad v'Eliu v'Talsi Rasha Alof Marshal Menashe. All of the heads of the families, the generals of Menashe came to join David HaMelech. So it's those generals that were able to defeat Esav. Moshe Rabbi Yosef, but it says in the pasuk Mehem min Bnei Shimon. There was from Bnei Shimon there as well. Shimon doesn't have that special force to be able to beat up Esav. Holcholar Seir Anoshim Chamish Meos. Talatya, B'nai Reo, B'Rafia, B'Uziel, B'nai Yishi. They were all the sons of Yishi Beroisha. And who are they from? They're from Shimon. And it says V'yaku Sheres applied to Lamalek, able to wipe out Amalek. V'yeshu Shem Adiyam Izeh. Rabbi Bashilai, Yishi is Mibnei Menashe also. Yishi also came from Menashe. Yishi was the son of Menashe, also from Shevet Joseph, and it was Yishi's generals that were needed to defeat Amalek. Tanu Rabban, Zok to Bryce Avaiter, and we're back into Bava Basra. HaBechor Noitel Pishnayim, if there's a Bechor who's a Kohen, he gets a double portion of his father's chayil. So if his father had Zuraya L'chayayim and Keva, if the father received Matnas Kuhuna, like any other asset, the Bechor will get a double share. Uvi Miktoshin, in any Karbonis. Uvishvach Sheshafchu Nechasim Lachem, or if there's any improvement that the Nechasim experienced on their own without input, after their father died, that's also considered muhsik, as if it was within the potential already of the estate to produce this, and therefore the Bechor will get a double chayil. Ketzad the Bryce Alat. The father owned an ox and he rented it out to a third party. They paid. And either there was rental that it received or it gave birth to a baby. Or it was just grazing in the meadows, eating free food. It wasn't rented out. It was still within the rishos of the father. The Yolda and gave birth. So now there's payers over here. There's shvach. Bechor noitel pishnayim. The Bechor will get pishnayim of that because that's also considered an outgrowth of what's already here. Aval bonu batim. What if the brothers got together and invested money in the property and built houses on it? Or v'notim kromim, they planted a vineyard? That already is not shvach to memelo. That was shvach that they invested to make the shvach happen. On that, ein bechor noitel pishnayim. So now the Gemara wants to get a better understanding of the braysos, so we're going to dissect it clause by clause. What exactly was the case? If the father received these makas kuhuna, pshita, why do I need the brayso to tell me that the bechor gets pishnayim? Why would these items be any different than any other items that were in the estate of the father? And if the father didn't receive them yet, then in fact, he shouldn't get pishnayim. Royu, that's only royu, because it wasn't automatically going to be in the father's rishus. It happened to come because someone decided to give him those makas kuhuna after he died. And we know the Bechor never gets a double chaylik in something that came to the father later on that wasn't even supposed to come to the father. It just showed up. Zaktamar, you're right. Here it's something that we know for sure was going to show up. You know why? You know who he received this royal Chaim Mekeva from? From somebody who always gave the Matnas Kuna always to this koy, to this father. And not only that, and before the father died, the owner of the cow already shechted it. So that means the Matnas Kuna were sitting in the dead animal ready to be given. And since we know they're going to go to his father, it's as if the father has them already. Because Sover Chiddush is that Matana Shloi Hermu, even though these items weren't cut out of the animal, yet they're still in the dead animal, the shechted animal. We look at them like they're separated already and that they belong to the kohen. So the chiddush is that even matana shalor hermu, the bechor of the kohen will get a double chiluk. Frankly, more about muktoshin. The next case that we said he gets a double chiluk is muktoshin. Muktoshin shouldn't be action at all. Love the denu. Korbanos don't belong to the kohen. They belong to the Rebbeinu Shalom. They belong to the Beis Hamikdash. We're speaking about Kaddish and Kalam while the animal is still alive. A Kaddish and Kalam animal is still alive, according to Rabbi Yosy Aglili, I'll leave it to Rabbi Yosy Aglili, the Amar Mammon Bailim. Rabbi Yosy Aglili holds that if you have a live Kaddish and Kalam animal, that belongs to you, meaning you be Mekadosh and Isha with it. The Tanya we learned, Umala Mol B'Hashem, the halach is if you steal from somebody and you swear that you didn't steal, and it turns out you did, you have to bring a carbon, a sham elois, not a sham elois, sham gzelos you have to bring. So that only works if you steal from somebody. So we learn from the Malam B'Shem, the rabbis Kaddish and Kalam, which mom and buy them. If you steal someone's Kaddish and Kalam, carbon shlomim, you will be mechuyev and not sham gzelos. So you see Kodeshim Kalam animal belongs to the owner. Okay, let's look at the next case of the brisa. Or the animal was grazing in the meadows. The Yolda, and they gave birth, once we already know that a rented para, which is out of the rishos of the father, it's by the renter. Nevertheless, we consider the shvach of that animal as part of the estate. If it's merely grazing, but surely still in the rishos of the father, it's pashut that the kohen who's a bechor should get double of that part. Hacham mukeres and muskares, the lav rishus of the mora did who kaimo mukeres and muskares, which are not in the rishus of the bailim. Amrit shakil, we say that the bechor kohen gets a double chelik. Roya be'efer meboy. It's pashut that if he's merely grazing, the animal's merely grazing, that's considered muksik by the father, and the son bechor should get pishnai. There's a very important reason why the Tana included the Roya be'efer, because Roya be'efer is going to tell us what the circumstances were by the mukeres. Kamash malon, the mukeres and muskeres is dumya the Roya be'efer. The only time an animal at mukeres and muskeres we say it's in the rishus of the bailim, and it's muksuk, that's only if it's similar to a case of Roya be'efer. What does that mean? Ma Roya be'efer, tzavacha de memela ka'asi, v'lek a chasri b'mazayim. Here, this animal, we weren't investing anything into it. We weren't paying for its feed. It was just grazing on hefker property, and the baby was just born like that without any input on behalf of the children. That's where we say it's considered muksik and the bechor gets pishnai. So too, af mukeres and muskeres only is shvacha de memela ka'asi like a chasri ba mizayim. The only type of shvach that they will get is if they didn't have to give it mezonius, meaning the renter was responsible for the mezonius, so they didn't have to put anything into it. But if the brothers had to put something into it, like feed it during this period of time, then of course the bechor will not get pishnayim from that lot. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we finished the daf for Shabbos. Now we're right on the daf. Kuf Chof Daled will be for tomorrow morning, and Be'ez Hashem will be mamshuk tomorrow. Good to vach.